Well, this here is the Nissan Micra, and think of it as a Nissan Sunny without the boot. So if you want to know about this car and its review, you should check out our video of the Nissan Sunny by clicking over here and opening it in a miniature size window, and you'll know what this car is exactly about. Only kidding, I am of course going to do a full review, and let's start it by talking about the interiors first. Well, so here I'm inside the cabin of the Nissan Micra, and this car is very similar to the Nissan Sunny, and what that means is that there's a strong element of circular design inside the cabin. Now it's a decent cabin in terms of overall plastic quality as well as ambience, but these beige seats do tend to soil rather easily, and also the positioning of the AC controls can be a bit of an issue for initial use because it is a little confusing to use. And here's another thing, if you are using an automatic version of the car like I am, your knee can actually touch over here on the AC button and the compressor can go off. So that's something that you should really take care of. So overall, a bit of a mixed bag. Quality is okay, but the design can seriously split opinion. In terms of practicality, it's a decent place to be. You get these two cup holders over here where I have kept my sunglasses as well as cell phone at the moment. And the door bins are also large enough to house those big 1 liter bottles. Well, so here I'm inside the Nissan Micra, and as you can see, headroom is more than adequate for someone who is my height, which for reference is 5'10". And even if I sit really upright like this, I do still have a lot of place. So 6-footers should not have any issues inside this car for sheer headroom. And knee room is decent as well. There's place below the front seats where I can keep my feet, and there's also one bottle holder over here for the rear occupants. The only issue is that there are no bottle holders in the door bins. And as you can see, because it is a very light beige shade on the upholstery, it does tend to soil rather easily. Another plus point about this car, apart from the headroom as well as legroom, are these huge windows, and these big windows make this cabin feel a lot bigger than it is, which means that if you have 3 occupants here on long journeys, it should not really be very claustrophobic. And these doors also open wide enough, which means that entry and exit for even older people should not be an issue. Well, so here I am driving the Nissan Micra. Remember, this car comes with 2 engine options. There's a 1.2 petrol as well as a 1.5 diesel, and of course you also get the CVT option that we are driving today. Now, talking about the petrol motors first. The petrol motor on this car is pretty efficient in terms of refinement, and the diesel 1.5, remember, is the same motor which also does duty on the Renault Duster as well as the Nissan Terrano. Well, the steering wheel on this car is pretty light, and of course if you are someone who has to slot his car into a tight parking space like I am doing at the moment, then it should not be a problem at all because of the compact dimensions of this car as well as the light steering wheel. Well, in terms of highway performance, this car feels pretty stable when you are on the highway, and it does remain very well planted. In fact, you won't even feel like you are driving a small car. Well, the Nissan Micra's diesel engine makes about 65 bhp of power, and even though it might be a little low in terms of the power delivery, this is probably one of the best engines on a small diesel car. And why do I say that? Well, because not only is it very refined, but it's also very responsive, and it starts responding from a relatively low 1500-1600 rpm, which means that driving this car in the city feels like you are driving a petrol motor and not a diesel. So kudos to Nissan for giving it such a nice diesel motor. Now, the 1.2 petrol which we are driving today with the CVT makes about 76 bhp of power, and power is more than adequate with 2 people on board as well as the AC. The Cvt Gearbox is pretty decent as well, but yes, you will really need to rev up the engine if you want to get good performance out of it. And that is something that can be a little annoying because the Cvt Gearbox takes a little time to get the car going. It is a little lazy to respond to throttle inputs. But that said, fuel efficiency is pretty good, and Nissan claims an efficiency figure of 19.34 kpl from this CVT. And also remember that Nissan is a Japanese company, so the engine is very good not only for smoothness but also for overall responsiveness towards the lower end of the power band. The other good point about this car is the fact that it has a very large glass area up ahead, which means that visibility is excellent, and because you sit up high, you get a very nice and commanding view of the road ahead, which makes it a good car to drive in the city. What also makes the CVT a joy to operate in the city is the fact that the steering wheel is really light to operate, and that with its compact dimensions means that parking it into tight parking spaces is not an issue at all. In fact, if you really look at it closely, the Nissan Micra at this price point is one of the better options in the automatic small car market and is also probably one of the most underrated cars out there in India. Well, even though rivals might offer you better looks or much more interior space as well as features, but if you're in the market for a well-engineered Japanese car but don't really want to go with the usual choices, then this is a car that you should definitely check out. The Micra does come across as a well-engineered car from the house of Nissan.